it's sort of like the terrorist flavor of the month that we're dealing with here. First we had Al-Qaeda is this huge global threat. Then it was ISIS. And then the Khorasan group, was produced. And the thing is, almost no one in Syria had ever heard of the Khorasan group. In fact, my understanding is that it was a term that was sort of used in the U.S. intelligence community and actually isn't the name of the people that they claim to be attacking. And what the entire policy boils down to is that the Obama administration has, in a very Orwellian way, changed the definition of commonly understood terms, primarily the term imminent. They are saying that the Khorasan group represented an imminent threat to the United States. But we know from a leaked white paper that was put out in advance of John Brennan's confirmation to be the CIA director, that the Justice Department actually has officially changed the definition of the word imminent so that it does not need to involve an immediate threat against the United States, that it could be a perception that maybe one day these individuals could possibly attempt to plot, not even carry out, a terrorist attack against the United States. That flimsy justification has been used now to expand this war from Iraq to Syria, potentially beyond. The Obama administration, in engaging in this policy, is continuing a Bush administration outcome of the decision to invade Iraq, and that is they're empowering the very threat that they claim to be fighting. Who is ISIS? What is this group made up of? Is it just people that are radical Islamists that want to behead American journalists? No. One of the top, and this almost is never mentioned in corporate media coverage of this, one of the top military commanders of ISIS is a man named Izzat Ibrahim al-Duri al-Takriti. Who is Izzat Ibrahim? Izzat Ibrahim is the leading Baathist who was on the deck of cards that the United States has not captured. He was one of Saddam Hussein's top military commanders. He was not just some ragamuffin Baathist. He actually was a hardcore general in the Iraqi military during the Iran-Iraq war, and he was a secular Baathist. Why is he fighting with ISIS? Well, when Bush decided to invade Iraq, and then he put Paul Bremer, who was a radical neocon ideologue who had cut his teeth working for Henry Kissinger. When Paul Bremer was put in charge of the occupation of Iraq, one of the first things he did was to fire 250,000 Iraqi soldiers simply because they were members of the Ba'ath Party. As one senior U.S. official at the time said, it was the day we made 250,000 enemies in Iraq. All of these Baathists have been jerked around by the United States, and the Sunnis in western Iraq jerked around by the United States for a very long time. There was the period of the so-called surge where the U.S. actually paid Sunnis not to kill the United States, U.S. soldiers, but then the U.S. turned around and put in power a Shiite-led government under Nouri al-Maliki that effectively operated a network of death squads that systematically attacked Sunnis. So the point I'm making here is, yes, there's an element of ISIS, I don't know how dominant it is within the group, that is trying to establish the caliphate. And they are beheading people, and they are imposing a very strict interpretation of Sharia law. But there are also, and I would suspect that they're best military figures, there is also a large contingent of people that are fighting the same battle that they were fighting when the United States originally invaded. The fact is there was no al-Qaeda presence in Iraq before George W. Bush made the decision to invade it, except in the Kurdish region in the north of Iraq, which was not under Saddam Hussein's control. In fact, it was under the control of U.S.-backed entities, and that was Ansar al-Islam. Saddam Hussein's forces were fighting that group. So what am I saying here? What I'm saying is that the United States, through its policies, created the very threat that it claims to be fighting now. And in continuing this policy, what President Obama is doing is embracing the very lies that made the Cheney-Bush Iraq war possible. And in the process, he's creating yet another generation of people in the Islamic world who are going to grow up in a society where they believe that their religion is being targeted, where they believe that the United States is a gratuitous enemy. And so this is sort of an epic formula for blowback. I mean, this is kind of kabuki drone theater here, because the reality is that even in their drone strikes that are supposedly done with precision and every precaution is taken not to kill civilians, The reality is that they've created a mathematical process for churning out the number of civilians killed in drone strikes that will always result in zero. Because if they kill a so-called jackpot, the target that they're aiming for, and they kill other unknown individuals, the system that the Obama administration, the U.S. military, and the CIA have developed is that anyone who is an EKIA, enemy killed in action, is someone who we don't have proof that they're innocent. In other words, it's sort of a reversal of the idea that you're innocent until proven guilty. If you are near someone that the U.S. was intending to kill, the presumption is that you are an EKIA, you're an enemy killed in action, unless someone can prove that you weren't. And I mean, most of these drone strikes we don't know anything about. So in a way, the fact that they're saying this, it has actually very little meaning, except that they're going to have even less regard for civilian lives than they already do through their kabuki theater with their existing drone program. U.S. policy has been its own worst enemy in one sense. We've created the very threats we claim to be fighting. But on the other hand, if you actually look at who benefits from this war, beyond entities like ISIS, because they do benefit from this. Every time we kill civilians in drone strikes, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula becomes stronger in the sense that they have a greater propaganda movement that they can roll out. The war industry. Lockheed Martin is making a killing off of the killing. Every Tomahawk cruise missile that's launched. The next generation of drone aircraft is going to be coming out. They're working on jet-propelled drones that are going to be able to stay in the air for a very long time. The war industry is in its twilight right now under Mr. Transformative Presidency Barack Obama. His administration has been an incredibly great friend to the war industry. And outside of some small groups of loony bins that are in Syria and Iraq, the war industry is the greatest beneficiary of this policy.
ISIS killing the journalists and the beheadings.
Yeah, I mean, this is, first of all, this has haunted me a lot. I mean, obviously, as a journalist who's worked in those areas, and I have a lot of friends now who are in those countries. I was horrified at it. In watching the videos, though, they were so, in both the case of James Foley and Stephen Sotloff, they're so calm in the statements that they are giving, and it's impossible to imagine that they know that they're going to be killed in those moments. And, my suspicion, and, I've done some reporting on this, is that they had been put in that position repeatedly and told, you have to say this statement. And in other words, they were subjected to mock executions over and over and over again. So, and if you notice in the videos, you don't actually see their heads being cut off. I think it's possible that that was like read number 31 for James Foley of this statement, and they took the best cut of that, and he may have been killed in another context, and then they placed it there. They have them in the orange jumpsuits. We know that they had been waterboarded. Where does this come from? This is inspired by what we did to Muslim prisoners around the world when we put them in gulags in Poland and Thailand and elsewhere in these so-called black sites, when we took them to Guantanamo, or we threatened their family that we were going to kill their families, or we put them in small boxes where they couldn't lay down and couldn't stand up, and we brought in psychiatrists to, in a very sick, macabre way, investigate and exploit the fears of the Muslim prisoners that we took under the auspices of fighting terrorism, and we would stick people in boxes, and if they had a fear of spiders, we would put a caterpillar in the box and tell them it was a tarantula to try to terrify them. JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command, ran a torture factory in Iraq at a camp called Camp Nama, which is nasty ASS military area, where they were just torturing people, trying to find the next target to hit. These militants are adopting the very tactics that the United States used and continues to use against Muslims that it captures.